Hello and welcome to this webinar on cybersecurity for healthcare across Europe. We welcome all of you and thank you to the participants for already sharing your insights with us. This afternoon we have a great lineup of speakers combining expertise on policy, cybersecurity and healthcare professionals. So we welcome warmly our panelists. And it's with my great pleasure to introduce the first of these, Dr. Sabina Magalini from the University Hospital at the Gemelli in Rome. The floor is yours. Thank you, Sabina.
Good afternoon. I welcome you all to our joint webinar. It is joint because it has been organized by 3 EU-funded projects, CUREX, PANACEA and SPHINX. They all deal with cybersecurity in hospitals, and they are coming all to conclusion by the end of March this year. We have taken the inspiration from this recent cyber attack in Ireland to illustrate how the adoption of the tools developed by the 3 projects could have prevented the attack or helped during the recovery phase. For a deep dive into the attack in Ireland, we have the privilege of having Mrs. Helen Cogan, CTO of the HSE, and we thank her immensely for her participation and willingness to share the lessons learned and all her personal experience. We will briefly illustrate our solutions and show you where and how you can access them. The webinar also includes an overview of the European Commission's actions for cybersecurity in the healthcare sector and an update on the most recent perspectives on healthcare cybersecurity from the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, the ENISA. I thank Dr. Reza Razavi from DG Connect and Mrs. Maria Papaphilippou from ENISA. I just want to share my screen. Our audience today comes from all European countries, but we also have representatives from Brazil and from Israel who registered. We have a wide variety of organizations and professional roles. More than 21 participants from 13 national cybersecurity agencies have registered, over 52 ICT directors, CISO, data protection officers from hospital and clinics as well. And we have also many software providers, academics, consulting companies, and representatives from ministries of health. If you remember, at registration, we asked you to fill a questionnaire on what you considered as a priority issue for the cyber protection of hospitals. These here that you see on the left are the results. As you see, all the issues we mentioned are considered important. However, the Cinderella seems to be the engagement of top management. Please remember these results, and we will present you the same questions at the end of the webinar. Maybe you will be surprised, or we will be surprised. After all, these projects are research, and research does not always give the results we expect, even if it is the indispensable stepping stone we have to start from for a more cybersecure future in healthcare. And with this, I want to thank the European Commission for having funded these projects and having given us this great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we all echo those words, Sabina. Thank you very much. So if you can stop, yeah, I will now share the slide deck and introduce our next guest, which is, in fact, Dr. Reza Razavi from DG Connect, the European Commission. He has been following us on our journey, so thank you very much for this, Reza. The floor is yours, and I will try my very best to move the slides as you need them to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. And let me first thank Dr. Magalini and the other co-organizers of this webinar for the invitation and also for the quite impressive participation in this webinar. I collect that we have several dozens of participants already online. Yeah, so I work for the European Commission under Directorate H, which is responsible for digital society, trust, and cybersecurity. And within my unit, e-health, well-being, and aging, we are driving multiple actions in relation with digital health, including research, innovation, and deployment actions. So I'm very happy to be still part of this journey that we started together actually in 2018 already, so four years almost. And in the remaining few minutes, I will try to outline very briefly the number of actions that have been taken in relation with cybersecurity and data protection by the Commission. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yes, so citizens' trust is a fundamental value underpinning the uptake and effectiveness of any digital technology in general and in the health sector more specifically. It is essential that people can trust the way their health data is being accessed, can trust innovative digital solutions, and can embrace them without fear. So we have seen examples of this situation and the importance of trust in very recent cases of the COVID digital certificates and also COVID contact tracing apps. So building trust involves security and data protection, which has been subject of these projects that are organizing this webinar today and have been of strategic importance for the Commission already since many years. The next slide, please. Yes, so the Commission has been taking a number of actions to build a trust framework and seek to leverage EU funding opportunities to support the digital transformation of healthcare and ensuring adequate data protection and security. So the strategic importance of such actions has been repeatedly emphasized by the Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, typically in her State of the Union speeches. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the European policy and legislative framework is quite broad and deep. I won't have a chance to go into the details, and I'm not able to, in a few minutes, present you all different actions that have been taken and are being taken, but I will provide an outline of the most important ones, at least those that we are directly involved within my unit. So in view of the recent cyber threats, attempting to capitalize on the disruption caused by the COVID pandemic, as it will be discussed later by my colleagues within this panel, the Commission has put forward a new cybersecurity strategy that looks at how to boost EU-level cooperation, knowledge, and capacity. So this is like typically within this context that we have been, and thanks to the contribution by these projects, we have been setting up an ISAC, an Information Sharing and Analysis Center for the health sector at European level, which is an ongoing action. So within this context, the Directive on Security of Network and Information Systems, the NIS Directive, has been reviewed already, and the proposal for additional measures on critical infrastructures protection is now reaching the final stages of the legislative process. Also in June 21, so a few months ago, the Commission proposed a framework for a European digital identity, which will be available to all EU citizens, residents, and businesses. And citizens will be provided by the ability, capability on a voluntary basis to trustfully access their health data through digital services and online services. And this is going to be an important building blocks for building trust within the union, and also empowering end users to access their data. So these developments will contribute to use digital identity to contribute to overall data security and protection in healthcare and health institutions. So we have furthermore the European data strategy that aims to make the EU a leader in a data-driven society, and the European Commission is working on a legislative framework for health data sharing. This is an important piece of legislation that is going to be discussed in the coming months. So again, data protection and cybersecurity and protection of health data is going to be a core component of this piece of legislation. The Commission has also already proposed a regulation on European data governance, which is now in the legislative process. And we also have already, since a few years, the General Data Protection Regulation, the e-Privacy Directive, and the eIDAS regulation, which adds additional dimensions that address additional dimensions in data protection and security. And we recently, so the Commission published recently a framework for digital identity for Europe, which will involve a wallet for citizens, again, on a voluntary basis, to take track of their credentials and attributes and to be able to safely and in a privacy preserving manner to connect to digital services online. So all these together should provide a secure and trustful framework for sharing health data across the union. A typical example that I could provide here is the 1+ million genome initiative, which is led by a number of 20+ member states, and which aims to connect 1 million genomes across the union through a distributed network. So this is an ongoing action of a major importance, because this will be one of the building blocks for personalized healthcare services. Then we have the whole research area of actions, and the Commission has been funding a number of research, innovation, and larger scale test and piloting projects. The projects that have organized this webinar are among those projects. And we have a specific actions in relation to cybersecurity and data protection within, again, Horizon Europe, which is the follow-up program, research program after Horizon 2020. Then we have the Digital Europe program, which is targeting larger scale deployment of innovative solutions. So in this case, we will be investing on the deployment of innovative solutions for cybersecurity and data protection within the health sector. And then, next slide, please. Yes, so this is about funding opportunities for e-health between 21 and 27. Then we have also an investment within the Digital Europe on addressing the shortage of digital expertise, specifically in critical sectors, including healthcare. And then all together, we will be working on providing a secure and trustworthy environment for for further digital transformation of health and care systems and solutions. So next slide, please. Yes, I would like to finish here by highlighting this specific action, which is part of the Digital Europe program, Work Program 21-22. I have provided a few references here to the annex to the work program on cybersecurity with this specific topic that is entitled Support to Cybersecurity in the Health Sector. This topic is going to be published rather soon, and it will provide an opportunity to bring research and innovation results to the actual European health sector infrastructure, specifically to support SMEs. This is why this action will co-fund up to 25% of the budget for SMEs that would participate and selected for funding within this topic. So yeah, I hope having provided you the outline that I was asked to do so, and I will be looking forward to having good discussions and learning about the latest achievements of these projects. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Razavi, for those insights and explaining to us this wide-ranging strategy and showing how many different facets need to come together to build trust along with the funding opportunities. So I'll now stop sharing my slide deck and introduce you to our next panelists to give us some real-world insights into a cyber attack. And I'm very pleased to welcome to the floor Peter Daly and Helen Coughlan from the Irish Health Service Executive. So thank you very much.
Hi guys.
Good afternoon. I just need to share my screen.
Yes.
You have it there. Okay, thank you for the opportunity of participating in this project. My name is Peter Daly. I work for the South-Southwest Hospital Group, which is the partner in the PANACEA project. The HSE is one of two. HSE is one of two partners, two Irish consortium partners in PANACEA. And when we joined on the 1st of January 2019, little did we think that we would be part of one of the most significant cybercrime attacks on the Irish state. Now, the HSE provides all of Ireland's public health services, mental health, primary care, health and wellbeing, national ambulance, acute hospitals. And the HSE is also the largest property portfolio holder in Ireland, with 4,000 locations and 54 acute hospitals. So now I'd like to introduce you to Helen Coughlan, who is the Chief Technology Officer. As CTO, Helen is responsible for delivering support on wider area networks, local area networks, landlines, mobiles, MiFi, compute and storage, ICT ops, and cybersecurity. So a busy lady. So Helen, over to you. Thanks. I'll move your slides for you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Peter. Thanks very much again for the opportunity to speak at this, and I suppose to share some of our pain. My name is Helen Coughlan, and as Peter says, I'm responsible, Chief Technology Officer, responsible for, I suppose, all the infrastructure, including telephony, server storage, end user devices, the network, whatever, supporting all the health services. Just to kind of put it into context, I suppose, from a size perspective, we're probably one of the largest IT organizations to a certain extent in Ireland by nature of I suppose, providing IT to the largest business in Ireland. HSE would be the largest business in Ireland. And these numbers just give you the kind of figures that we're dealing with respect to our infrastructure, and I suppose they give a sense of the threat plane. So if you think of everything as a threat plane, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be minded. So it's like you have a lot of children, and often the problem is knowing how many children you actually have. So if you go to the next slide, when you take that size of an organization, I suppose, I suppose part of the reason I'm here is to speak about our experience with respect to the cyber attack. And I want to give context actually to it. And in some words, someone might say, well, actually, am I making an excuse? But it's not really. But I think it's important to understand the context of where we were as an organization when the cyber attack hit. So on the left-hand side, you have this large organization, which is complex by nature and had grown out of a legacy of smaller health services that were brought together into a single entity. And that legacy was only being kind of broken down and kind of, becoming rationalized. It's 30 years worth of legacy. So therefore, there was a lot of work going on in the organization to start to standardize some of the foundations. And that work was going at a certain pace when, I suppose, in January 2020, the world, or probably December 2019, really, the world got hit with the COVID pandemic. And from our perspective, that just drove demand way beyond anything we'd ever experienced. I mean, it would be difficult to articulate what it meant. So if you look at the numbers on the side, like in terms of devices, we put on another 20,000 devices to support all the various services that were required to service COVID. We set up test centers, we had contact tracing, and we had no vaccination system. So basically, in the period of 4 to 6 weeks, we stood up an enterprise vaccination system. Put in about 100 vaccination centers, be the small pop-ups and kind of large, static ones. So this drove the organization into a workload that was beyond anything we'd ever experienced. So at that stage, a lot of the big programs of call it security improvement stalled or paused. Then in April 2021, you have a bit of a thumbs up there, because to be honest with you, I booked my first holiday and I went, this is great. The figure on the right shows our vaccination status. And I suppose what that had showed, that as a country, Ireland was getting into a really good space. People were getting vaccinated. We felt at least one of, all the tools we had in our arsenal were up and running. We had good testing, we had good contact tracing, and now vaccination as the other tool in our arsenal to deal with COVID was in a good space. So we were feeling, I will say, quite positive from a technology perspective. We had very good patterns of operations. So again, we were starting to feel, look, we've kind of come over the hill. And then I suppose, as I say, from hero to zero, on the 14th of May, we got hit with this cyber attack, which effectively, wiped out, a significant portion of the majority of our infrastructure. So if you just move to slide, thanks, Peter. So just in terms of what that meant and how the kind of path of it from a technical view. So I kind of have the slide here, and on the top it kind of talks through kind of at a very high level what happened. And then I suppose some of the things is kind of what would you do different, or what were my notes to myself at the time, or even afterwards, So basically, it all started actually in March. So although the actual attack happened in May, the first breach of what was called Laptop Zero was basically a malicious email in March, which resulted in I suppose their initial kind of foray into our network. So that kind of then allowed them to start executing the kind of more sophisticated threats, harvesting credentials, and and leading eventually to human operated ransomware. I suppose what struck me afterwards, and I wouldn't have been as aware at the time, was that it's a business, and when you start seeing the business of cybersecurity through the eyes of the businessman and his operating model and what level he works at in the chain of cybersecurity threat, it certainly gives context in a sense to how these whole kind of operations happen. So you get the initiation, you get kind of some level of persistence, you get some level of identity that you can sell on, You then get into the next phase where they start to get on with their tooling and start to gather data for sale, identities for sale, or prepare themselves to do a ransomware attack. And all these are, I would have said, now looking back on it, business decisions. So there is small time businesses that basically just get in, get credentials and sell them. And they're the small time crooks. They're the guys in the drugs ring, the little guys on the bikes running around with the packets of pills. The next level up is the kind of regional dealer where they now say, well, I now have some credentials. I'm going to either leverage them to get kind of, more profitable type credentials or data that might be of value. So they're starting to build a value proposition around what they can see. And then the end game is the ransomware type people who will come in and do the damage on your infrastructure. So I suppose in our case, I would say there was a bit of all of that happened. So between March, so when the initial breach happened in March, it suddenly went quiet. So effectively that lulls you into a sense of security around your infrastructure. And this is something, I suppose, when you look back on it, you wouldn't be as easily lulled. But again, I suppose the context of it, where we were in the middle of the pandemic, I suppose, that also probably took a lot of our attention. So effectively, once the ransomware had happened, we now had 80% of our state, which was basically encrypted. The kind of things on the left, you go, well, what? Like user awareness is really key, trying to make people aware of the level of threat and actually what can happen out of it. Because I think you can send emails, till the cows come home, and people kind of don't really believe it could result in the absolute devastation that we had in our estate. So email hygiene, we've increased that. And our endpoint protection and detection, you need to be kind of constantly improving this. So you need to be moving from the, signature based to the behavior based to future proofing to kind of AI type technology. And then I suppose the next thing is when you get into this idea that at this stage today, we all need to be sitting at our desks going, are they on our network? How do I know they're not on my network? So we had a period where we didn't realize they were on our network. And now you go, well, what was it that we missed, or how would we ensure? So now you're into kind of the command and control type detection. But the other area that leads you on to is what can they do? And privilege activity is one of the key areas that every organization should target, because the less privilege you have and your less privilege that people have or that accounts have in a kind of open manner, the easier it is to see problems. So I think privileged activity, which again was one of our big focuses that we had been working on prior to the whole of COVID, is really key. And then, so it's really down then as you're going across knowing privilege, detecting command and controls, and having SIEM logs there to kind of pull all this stuff together into intelligence, because a lot of this is, when it's seen as disjointed activity across your network, it's not always obvious that it is bigger than just that single incident, that this is a combination which should be causing and raising concern in your organization. From the ransomware attack perspective, I mean, if I was to be honest and things, I think we did quite a good job. I mean, our external partners we brought in were quite amazed, I suppose, at the recovery we did. However, it would have been noted as part of reports that if we had kind of pre-prepared response plans, you're in a better position. Communications, people plan for communications, but it's often in a kind of a more kind of gilded lily kind of, oh, well, sure, we'll probably have email, or we'll probably have this. When you suddenly have nothing, you need to be prepared for that. How do you tell people the situation you're in? How do you keep people informed? Because it causes a lot of, angst across the organization, and people, need to be aware of what they can and can't do and what opportunities are there to get their services back. So that's communications was one of the key things that came out of us as to how we would handle that. Obviously the whole recovery and understanding criticality. So one of the key things is that when you do get hit, and I think that's one of the messages I would say is, everybody will get hit at some stage. I suppose it's just the size of the impact. So you need to be ready. And the first thing you need to know when you're ready is what's the most important thing to your organization, and that needs to be business led. So in other words, if you had nothing and you needed to open one department, or you needed to open one service, or you needed to start up one activity, what would that activity be? And you build the list, and then and then you need to understand from a technology pattern, what is the technology pattern that delivers that? Because it's not just one server or one application. It is often a combination of applications or a combination of underpinning technologies that need to be there. So that would kind of be a run through of what happened to us, and I suppose some of the kind of thoughts that we would have had after it. So if you don't mind moving on, Peter. So from an organization perspective, in the midst of the whole things, we did get help in from lots of organizations. So, and that's also, you know, particularly for something that is like ourselves, we would be obviously under the NIS directive as an operator of essential services, and our dependence and reliance on other organizations, and I suppose the reliance on your country and your country's framework and your country's approach to cybersecurity is really important. And that was very critical in terms of, I suppose, advice and support that we would have got from the likes of the NCSC, from the likes of the Defence Forces, from the government. All government departments all stood up and kind of positioned themselves and offered themselves in terms of help, and from the Garda Síochána. So there was lots of those. We also had a lot of support from critical vendors, you know, some of our support partners. So effectively, we, you know, that made a massive difference in terms of, you know, getting the support and framework to start doing recovery in a manner and things. We obviously took out the super injunction, which again was a kind of an imaginative kind of step to get this injunction in place against our data. I mean, the whole kind of exfiltration of data, and I suppose the law and the legal kind of regulations around that all needs to be looked at in terms of actually bringing any of this to a termination and to something where, you know, you get what you would say a conviction out of it to a degree, because it's very difficult. I've been through a few other instances, and it is extremely difficult, even in a case, and we've simple cases where we knew the perpetrator, but the difficulty is to bring it to conclusion in terms of the order and the legality and the various kind of procedures that you have to follow. On the right hand side is just a kind of one of the artifacts that we would have used in terms of daily situation reports that we would have put out there in terms of trying to show the organization the progression as you go on. Because initially when this happened, there was a view that effectively we would be finished, you know, quite quickly. So there was a view that, you know, wasn't it great it happened on a Friday, because probably IT would work through the weekend and it would all be fixed on Monday. The enormity of what had happened to us, it was difficult to kind of get that across to people. And you know, and although we stood up a lot of our really critical services really quickly, the likes of our radiology services and our patient management systems, there was a lot, the tail end of it was difficult. So there was a lot of kind of lower, what, you know, would have been lower critical, but yet as the services start up, the criticality of these becomes more obvious. And oftentimes, you know, that's how you find out something is critical, is when it's missing. So effectively, if we want to move on, Peter, thanks. So I suppose some of the key kind of, you know, kind of learnings that came out of it, you know, was it is all around understanding, you know, the technology dependence in this digital world and having the governance in place, that your board really understands cyber risk. And we would have reported into the board on cyber risk, but to be fair, you know, again, in the context of where we were reporting, you're reporting on something that, you know, it's like, well, it's never happened, you know, so it'll probably, so at the back of people's minds, there's often this view that it happens to other people, but it probably wouldn't happen us. So it's really important to kind of get the message across. And I suppose that's why, to me speaking on something like this to a wide organization says, you know, here's me saying it does happen to you, you know, and if it does happen, you need to be prepared, and it probably will happen, you know. I think the whole kind of terms of cybersecurity strategy and leadership is critical, and it's great to see, you know, all the various governments coming together and Europe coming together with respect to a strategy and standards and measures and controls that allow us all to stand up. And so, yeah, you know, we've raised the bar to a certain degree, because I think that'll make life really hard for people who are trying to you know, run this business of cybersecurity, which is exactly what it is. So from our perspective, we need single point. Now, this is specific to our organization, because although we had cybersecurity capability, we didn't at that stage have a CISO, and that's one of the key actions out of it. So this point is really a specific learning from us, from our point of view. Business continuity, although we had, I'd say, fantastic emergency crisis management teams. We had lots of artifacts around this. I think, you know, the whole exercise of linking that business continuity down into the actual critical assets in the organization, be they locations, be they people, be they IT assets, and having response plans that were not IT led. That just needs to be brought together and codified, because the big thing here is to get this information and get it codified, that you can lift it and use it in the event of a similar type of things. You need to be assessing and testing this, and anyone who works in healthcare, I suppose, understands the never-ending demand of services. So from a clinical perspective, you'll probably never find an industry where you'll never meet demand, because the reality of it is there's probably never enough clinical resources, there's never enough beds, there's never enough lower level admin resources. So the problem is we're always in this position where we're kind of stretched, but at the same time, I think if you don't kind of assess and test your controls and test how you would operate in the event of these types of incidents, you would be caught, and then the end game, the result is larger cost to the organization and larger service impact, and obviously the main thing being the impact on patient safety, and that risk has to be kind of key. So we need kind of, as an organization, to create space. Health service needs to create space for this sort of activity. I suppose in terms of monitoring, the whole thing, and it's who, what, where, and when. So who's doing what, where are they doing it, when are they doing it, and what's normal. And this is where a lot of the new kind of technologies in terms of kind of artificial intelligence that is analysing what is normal behaviour for people. So if you have activity which is, outside the norm, that it'll actually stand out, and you'll be able to say, well, actually, is it normal, or is there something that needs to be done? A lot of the cloud solutions do this with, where they would know things like impossible travel, that sort of stuff. And there's certainly a lot of controls you can put in place to manage that down. But then as you try to become more flexible in terms of who can access data, in terms of our patients accessing data, it becomes more difficult, because they can do they're who, but they can do what they want, when they want, where they want, potentially, or that may be what they want. So you need to balance service and regulation and availability and cyber. So there's things. I suppose from our perspective, again, some of the key things was, to target privileged users and that activity and get that down to the minimum level. Like in, a lot of the big cloud providers, like over 99.6% of their data is actually, or privileged activity is automated, so no human would be allowed to do it. So that means then it's very easy to see the wood from the trees. Multi-factor authentication, I mean, I shouldn't even have it here, but it's now, you should have it. If you don't have it, just get it. It's not so simple. It's not complicated, really. In our case, due to kind of, again, I'll talk about, due to the breaking eggs, it's often difficult in an organization where a lot of the people, they're clinical, they're not necessarily technical, and they just find this a pain. They don't, they want to, when they want to go into some mobile device, they don't want to have to do MFA every time. They want to be able to get straight in, and it interferes with the clinical process for them in many ways, they would say. And I suppose that we would get a lot of pushback. So I think you need to stand firm now on that. Again, raising your threat detection capabilities in terms of, go beyond the signatures and behavior into AI type stuff is really important. And user awareness. I think user awareness in an organization that, yes, this can happen to your organization, and to be careful at all times. So if you don't mind moving the slide again, please. So I suppose the thing is, what now from us, and I just took a quote out of the PwC report where it kind of talked about how vulnerable we were, and that really, that there's transformational change. And I suppose what I tried to kind of indicate here is where the transformation kind of needs to happen. And I suppose on the left-hand side is you need to start doing the assurance and testing around healthcare, which probably isn't there to the same level at this kind of, call it technology, if you call it technology layer, that, for example, would be in the banks. You probably don't get the same level. It's starting to come in with the NIST directive, and albeit it will be probably, the most challenging thing for me to get this coming at me, because it'll be lots of actions. It is where you have to go, because if you're not doing the assurance and you're not doing the testing, all the tools and technology tell you nothing. I think the whole kind of cybersecurity strategy and leadership. I think to start seeing European strategy, Ireland, you know, we've produced our own kind of government strategy with respect to cybersecurity. All that pulls together and allows us a line. So we're all starting to point the arrows in the right direction. And that's really, really good. The single point of accountability is a pure HSE. I don't think you'll ever have one across the whole of the world. But I do think, you know, to start having accountability at a kind of organization level, at a country level, at a European level, certainly does help. And I think organizational awareness and readiness is again a key area. Control improvements is something that has to keep continuing. And again, you've got to take, this is our stuff, like our identity and access management, all of that, threat detection and response. These are areas where we're going to target major improvements. We would have had a lot of really good enterprise class controls in place, but I think you can never stop. So this has got to be ongoing service improvement in the area of cybersecurity at all time. And the last one is the big one, enterprise risk management within your organization and even out to your country and even out European, so that you can start feeding up the risk appetite of your, you know, define the risk appetite of your organization. And at what stage does that, when that gets tripped, what is the organization response? What will that be? And that is a constant feed up the organization to ensure that cyber is known, understood, measured, and managed in your organization. From any organization perspective, there are foundational building blocks that really need to be in place. And to build a cybersecurity framework without these building blocks, in my opinion, it is fraught with difficulties. Having some kind of a framework, in our case, I mean, we're aligning with the NIST framework, but aligning with some solid security framework is key, because now you have a standard that you can measure yourself against. I think like having the national cybersecurity strategy that you can tie yourself into, because that again gives you very good guide rails in terms of what best practice looks like. Identity and access management is massive in my opinion, and I think this is where as a organization, as a country, as a, you know, across the whole of Europe, we need to be clear, because what is identity anymore? I certainly don't know, to be honest with you, because we have call it our HSE identity, but then what you get is, you might get someone in the HSE who uses their HSE identity on a social media. So that's now their identity being used for a purpose that I certainly didn't design it for. They're also a patient. They're a doctor, but they're also a patient. Which identity do they use? And how do you deal with those multiple identities that's associated with this one person to ensure that they get the right information and that it's secured in a manner? And then, you know, and then to understand that I, as a doctor in one unit, say in Ireland, is allowed to look at information, does that still allow you to look at across Europe? And I think those are the kind of regulations and understandings that we need to have, and some kind of guiding principle put in place that say, as a kind of wider health delivery service, we all need to align and agree with how that's going to work. So to me, you know, in our world, I suppose my main focus is to get our identity within the organization, across, you know, our kind of other health services, the GPs, the VHIs, all the insurance companies, all these other people who play a part, our private hospitals who play a part in delivering health services, that we're very clear on how identity is managed across that. Asset management is another one. And if you don't know what's on your network, and if you don't know what's managed and unmanaged, then it's very, very difficult to manage, and to manage the cyber security risk associated with it. And now, of course, with the complexity of technology and the digitization, you know, it's gone away from a simple case of a couple of servers and a couple in the computer center and a load of devices. We've operational technologies, we've medical devices, we have the, you know, Internet of Things, we've wearables. And I suppose in understanding the cybersecurity posture across all those, and understanding the interactions of those and how you manage that interactions in a secure manner is absolutely critical. So to do that, you need to have some kind of asset management capability that can link it to critical assets and link it to critical services, and understand, you know, the security posture that is required, and you need to measure against that. And I suppose the last bit again is organizational awareness, because I can't stress stress this really, because it needs to be an awareness, not just in terms of, you know, users not clicking on emails, but also an awareness that says, well, actually, if I don't do this, so if I don't prioritize this remediation activity or this, what would deem to be IT work, it actually completely impacts on my security posture and will actually potentially down the line cause an instance similar to the one that we had today. So that's kind of, I suppose, where we're going, is to try and kind of move all the dials across all of those kind of main areas. If I go to the last slide, which is kind of, it's a bit of a kind of a funny look at what happened to us to a certain extent, although as you can imagine, it wasn't particularly funny. It was kind of like cybersecurity is at the movies, and it was kind of like, for anyone who doesn't know any of these films, you're probably younger than me. So if we looked, it started with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in You've Got Mail. So that basically came in, and then it effectively meant we now had, unknown to ourselves, Big Brother watching us in terms of you know, activity on our network that we were now not aware of. I suppose the main thing for me, and it's been, you know, probably everyone out there kind of knew this and focused on it, but the business of it has certainly changed how I think about it. So now I'm thinking of the business models that the operators out there of cybersecurity kind of threat and ransomware, I'm trying to think through their lens. So I'm now looking at it, obviously, as I always had, through the technology lens and protecting the enterprise and whatever. But I'm also saying, okay, if I was in business, what would I do? You know, and trying to understand the business models that they will use and how we will tackle that. And that comes down to the kind of things like, they know they have to beat the signature base. They know they now have to beat the behavior base. So where are they going next? So I think that's kind of, I'm trying to say, well, if I was in business, what would I do next? SEAM I've put in as Beauty and the Beast, and that's a bit of a techie joke, so apologies to people who are not into technology. I think the beauty of SEAM is that it takes all your logs and put them somewhere. I think the beast of it is, it's a bit like Where's Wally, where you have all these people on the beach, and somewhere in the middle of it is this threat actor, or Wally as we might call them. And I suppose, you know, SEAM can be like that. And unless you've got really good intelligence or tools to be able to sort that mess out and actually target the actual activity, you'll have a lot of false positives and a lot of effort going into very little gain. And that's why, if I go right back to the concept of privileged activity, in general, you want to take the activity that they would use to infiltrate or exfiltrate or to damage your environment, and you need to basically clear the beach of that activity. So then Wally's easier to see, because if somebody's going around doing that activity, you're saying, well, that's not normal, because normally that's done by an automation or by the service account. So I think that, to me, is where the Where's Wally comes in. So I think, you know, and then the last bit, I suppose, is Jerry Maguire, where it came to show me the money. So at the end of it all, it basically started with an email and started with, you know, these actors on show me the money. So that kind of really summarizes it in a bit of a whistle-stop tour.
Okay, thank you so much, Helen. That was really interesting, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions for you which will be dealt with in the chat at the end. So thank you so much. And now we'll hand over to PANACEA, CUREX, and SPHINX, and they can tell us what some of their solutions might be.
Yeah, we'll start with Pasquale Mari, who is Deputy Coordinator of the PANACEA project, who's give us a brief overview of the joint catalogue that we've put together as the 3 projects hosting this event. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Can you hear me? Stephanie?
Hi, we can
Please
hear you.
go, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Take the floor, yes.
Okay, okay. So let's go now. We have spoken about the general project of the European Commission, DG Connect, etc. Then we had the rich description of what happened in the Ireland and which are the lessons learned. Now let's see how all these things go together in the 3 projects that have organized this webinar. So the projects are CUREX, PANACEA, and SPHINX. and what they have produced. Each one of them has produced tools. The tools can be used independently, one each other, or together. The tools in this table, you see the full set of tools. And what we have done here is a classification of them. And we have clustered them according to their functions, let's say, data sharing and access controls, evaluation, validation, certification, knowledge collection and sharing, systems monitoring, training and awareness. I think all these elements are key. Just one word about knowledge collection and sharing. Knowledge sharing deals with the collection of information about the types of incidents, about the type of threats, etc. The other terms I think are quite clear. As you see, each project has produced tools for the most part of these categories of tools. There are some, for instance, data sharing access controls. You see there are 2 tools from CUREX, 2 from PANACEA, 1 from SPHINX. What these tools are will be described later in a moment by each project. What we wanted to show here is the fact that all these tools take care of a variety of functions, and they can be used as a toolkit, as a whole, if you want. This is a big box where we can find tools that can help you in doing something. For instance, if you want to assess the network, you can use the DRMP from PANACEA, or you can use the asset recovery tool from CUREX, or vulnerability assessment from SPHINX. They are not equivalent to one each other. They do the same function. They have some specific approaches, and all of them, in our opinion, are valuable because they come out from the research that we have done. So this is what we have produced. Now, how these tools link to the HSE attack? We picked this attack as an example of a big use case for our tools. So this is okay. This is how they fit in what happened in the attack. In order to show the use of our tools during with regard to the HSE attack, cyber attack, we structure the attack in 4 big phases. There is a pre-attack phase, there is a detection phase, and then there is a recovery phase. The recovery phase is split in 2 parts. The second one, this column, the column you see here on the right, extreme right, is the classical recovery activity. The recovery activity has the purpose to restore the functionalities of the systems. But during this time, in the HSE case, this took months, months to do this, 3-4 months, to go up to back to 100% of functionalities of the systems. There is a long period of months where you have not the full operationality of the system, but you have to share information, you have to manage information and data. How can you do this in a secure manner? Here you see that CUREX, PANACEA, SPHINX, we have produced tools that can help in each one of these phases, and also in the recovery, what we call the recovery 1 phase. Now I will leave the floor to the colleagues of the 3 projects, and they will show you will describe more precisely what the tools are, and how they fit. They might have helped in the HSE attack in each of the phases: pre-attack, detect, and recovery. In particular, recovery 1. You will see. We will give examples. Thank you very much. I leave the floor to Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. There's a question in the Q&A panel asking if these tools are available. Yes, they are. They're on each of the project websites. So we'll be sending you the specific links afterwards. So yes, thank you. And we now pass the floor to our three.
Sorry, Stephanie, just one thing. They are available in terms of description on the.
Yes,
yes,
obviously.
but
They
will be also available for use.
Yes.
And we will explain later how to access them.
Yeah, in fact, that's probably something that our next panelists will be able to also point out. So I now welcome on board back Dr. Sabina Magalini from the Gemelli Hospital, Coordinator of PANACEA, Christos Ntanos from SPHINX project, and Christos Xenakis from CUREX. So thank you very much. The floor is yours. So yeah, here's so we have these three speakers at the bottom. I think we can start sharing the screen.
So Stephanie, I will start, Christos Xenakis, with the CUREX. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, my name is Christos Xenakis. I'm a professor in the University of Piraeus in the area of cybersecurity, and I'm the coordinator of the CUREX project. A few words about the project. CUREX project aims to protect the health data that either are maintained or exchanged among the healthcare organization. Our approach, the approach that we follow in CUREX is we perform cybersecurity and privacy risk assessment. We follow a risk-based approach, as we say. We have developed a tool and approach that provides optimal recommendation, actually optimal security solution and optimal security investments, considering also the financial aspects. We have designed and provide a blockchain technology, and blockchain technology serves for accountability, auditability of all the transactions, and also build trust among the participants, at the end among the healthcare organizations that intend to exchange data. And from our experience, we have developed a cyber hygiene culture for the healthcare personnel in order to be sure that they behave and they use the ICT technology in the correct, right way. Our consortium consists of 17 partners from 9 European countries. You see here all the partners that consist the CUREX consortium. In brief, what we do in CUREX, we focus on asset and vulnerability discovery. Actually, we have developed tools to discover all the assets and, of course, the vulnerability that a healthcare organization consists of, the network of an organization consists of. We provide threat intelligence. We translate all this vulnerability into security threats. And based on this analysis, we are able to evaluate the risk, the privacy, the security risk, and also provide risk management. After that, using the blockchain, we are able to, let's say, store and record all the transactions, all the risk scores, and also provide trust among the participants using the blockchain technology. We have developed a specific application that targets the patients and the healthcare personnel that visualizes all the procedure, all the data transaction, and at the last but not least, we focus on end user and we try to educate them. As we have seen from our research that this is very important. In brief, what is the tool set that we have provided? As Pasquale mentioned about, we have developed individual tool. We have the asset discovery tool that discovers all the devices that are connected to the target network, as well as all kinds of information that this network maintains. Based on the asset and the information that a network includes, we have developed a vulnerability discovery manager which analyze and manage all the vulnerabilities of the target infrastructure. Then we employ what we say security analytics, because based on the infrastructure, we analyze different sources in real time in order to find new threats. in order to find zero-day or close to zero-day vulnerabilities that has just developed or has just announced. Then we have the threat intelligence engine. Threat intelligence engine translate actually the vulnerability into threats, because each vulnerability can be applied or has different results in its domain. So considering the health domain, we translate the vulnerabilities of the health network to the specific threats. Then we have the cut and pat, as we say, the cybersecurity assessment tool that analyze all the cybersecurity risk, and the privacy assessment tool that analyze all the privacy assessment, analyze all the privacy risks. Having this quantification of both cybersecurity and privacy risk, we have the optimal safeguard tool that provides optimal security investment, actually provides to the ICT personnel optimal solution that can be applied to the network in order to minimize both the security and the privacy risk. Everything from the discovery up to the risk management or privacy risk management are written in a blockchain. Together, all the specific score, all the vulnerabilities together with the transaction. So this we provide this functionality in order to have auditability, accountability, and also to be able to establish mutual trust among the participating organizations, because we can evaluate the score, the level of security vulnerabilities or the security or privacy risk of each organization in a transparent manner. As I said, we have applications that all this functionality can be visualized, can be seen by the end user. And of course, based on the experience, we have provided all this cyber hygiene procedure on how to use the ICT technologies. Here, as Pasquale mentioned, we can see a categorization of the tools based on the specific application of our tool. For example, we have preventive measures, we have detection measures, and we have measures tools that can be applied for the recovery of the health organization after a cyber attack. Let's see now how our tool set and our outcome, the CUREX outcome, can be applied to the considered use case, and hopefully it could help to minimize this risk. First of all, we have interconnected healthcare organization, which is beneficial to provide the proper healthcare services, but this fact expands the attack surface and leads to the emergence of new threats. We have seen that in a 4 days period, 7 different hospitals were compromised. Our point is that the spread of this attack might have been prevented with specific measures like these that CUREX provides, that identify the vulnerable part of the network or the compromised part of the network, and isolate this vulnerability from the rest of the network. What we follow in our solution, we follow, as I said, a risk-based security framework. What we do, we analyze the security gaps, considering the organization nature, the process, and the workflow. And here we see we have 2 main engines, the cybersecurity assessment tool and the privacy assessment tool. We run this procedure, and we can identify and calculate all the cybersecurity and privacy risks. Having this risk, we run the optimal security solution, the OST tool that provides to the administrator security measures that are necessary in order to eliminate both cybersecurity and privacy risks. And for each, after the application of each measure, then we are able to run again and again. We have continuous monitoring in order to be sure that we have minimized both, as I said, the cybersecurity and the privacy risk. So when we run the the CAT and PAT, the cybersecurity risk assessment tool, and the privacy. Everything is, all the scores and all the findings are written in the blockchain. Again, with the optimal security controls, the optimal security solution, everything is written in the blockchain. So we start from a red area, from an area that is vulnerable, and we try to push the network, to push the infrastructure to accomplish, let's say, a green behavior, to have low or very low risk. And everything is written in the blockchain and in smart contracts for transparency. Together with any transaction, the intention of a transaction, of the occurrence of its transaction. And what we achieve, before a health data exchange occurs, the smart contracts can validate whether the two exchange parties, for example, hospital A and hospital B, comply with the security policy of each other. So if they comply, so if the security risk, the privacy risk is acceptable, or everything in the organization is okay, then we can have this transaction. Then we can have the exchange of data. Otherwise, this exchange of data is prohibited. So in this way, what we do, we identify all the security threats, all the security vulnerabilities, and we can exclude the vulnerable hospital or parts of the hospital or parts of the organization before the infection. Our solution, the CUREX platform, currently is at TRL 6, and it requires further testing and validation. In the CUREX we are ready. We have already concluded in the market plan, so we can provide our platform to external business partnership or transferring the CUREX technology to third parties. Moreover, the CUREX consortium includes two big integrators, two big companies, Athens and Intrasoft, that they have committed to analyze the possibility to incorporate the CUREX solution in their portfolio. These are the tools that we have developed, the ownership of each tool. We have specific ownership, and we have video demos, we have deliverables, we have developed papers, and all of these tools are available to the Horizon Result Booster. Thank you. This was my presentation about the CUREX result and how this can be used, and I will be glad to answer to any possible question. So I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Christoph. I think we can come to the panel discussion for any questions.
Yeah.
But please, to the audience, please feel free to post them in the chat or the Q&A panel. We'll now move on to our next coordinator, which is Christos Ntanos, Senior Researcher at the National Technical University of Athens. Thank you.
All right, I suppose it's okay. My name is Christos Ntanos, and I am a researcher. I'm a research director at the National Technical University of Athens, the Decision Support Systems Laboratory, and I am the coordinator of the SPHINX project. The SPHINX project aims to bring a cybersecurity solution that enhances the cyber protection of the healthcare IT ecosystem and ensure the patient's data privacy and integrity. It has 17 partners from 9 EU countries with university, large industrial partners, hospitals, software houses, technology providers, and SMEs in varying fields of relevant expertise. The project started in January 2019, and it is near its completion in March this year. The resulting tools and the integrated platform is being tested in 3 pilot sites that include 4 hospitals in total, 2 in Greece, 1 in Portugal, and 1 in Romania. To get an idea of the main components of the SPHINX solution, here's an overview of its architecture. On the top, you can see the representation of the operational IT environment of the healthcare organization we integrate our solution with. The main building blocks of SPHINX are the device verification and certification for the verification of the level of cybersecurity of software applications and services, the automated cybersecurity risk assessment, which deals with advanced and automated tools to assess the level of cybersecurity of a given environment, The decision support system interactive dashboards that targets user-side functionalities related to decision support. The cybersecurity toolbox, centralized tool which enables users to select SPHINX services and functionalities. Third-party APIs to enable third-party healthcare solution integration. And the common integration platform for all SPHINX components and systems. The main tools that have been implemented and tested are the vulnerability assessment as a service and automated cybersecurity certification, which uses a common vulnerability scoring system to constantly assess the vulnerabilities of all connected endpoints, including any newly connected ones. The data traffic monitoring and the anomaly detection tools that work together to identify threats in the network traffic based on a signature level analysis, and also using AI to detect activities that seem to be out of place from normal or expected traffic. Real-time cyber risk assessment models for incident management, which periodically assess the risk of cybersecurity incidents within an organization, determining their probable consequences and present warning levels and alerts. The security information and event management, the CM, which is monitoring logs, flows of events of applications, network operation systems, devices, including data from many other sources. The artificial intelligence honeypot and machine learning empowered intrusion detection tools that act as a decoy to appear as a vulnerable system to lure attackers and identify tools and methods used by them to perform malicious actions. The cyber threat taxonomy and forensic data collection engine, which collects and combines information generated from security incidents of multiple sources and types. The homomorphic encryption data privacy tool, which performs data anonymization and allows for searching in the encrypted data without actually decrypting them. Decision support engine, which helps suggest preventive and counteractions for potential or implemented attack vectors. The attack and behavior simulators that simulate an IT ecosystem with its normal network activity, on which simulated attacks can be performed to test systems and the response of personnel. The cybersecurity knowledge base, which offers cyber threat intelligence information, and the blockchain-based threats registry, which is a shared registry of threats that use a Hyperledger Fabric blockchain network to ensure its integrity. These tools, as well as some others that are not mentioned here, are part of the integrated capabilities of the SPHINX solution. They can be found both in our project website, sphinx-project.eu, alongside demonstration videos and guides, as well as by searching the Horizon results platform with the keyword SPHINX. Now, regarding the attack on the HSC, and using the post-incident review from PwC as a basis, we will focus on a few of the tools that address the remark that although some signs were present up to a month before the detonation of the malicious code, these did not appear as urgent and critical as to immediately mobilize a full-scale response that may have prevented it. In this context, we mean that we are investigating the detection phase for this presentation, although SPHINX does have other capabilities as well with the rest of the phase. So the tools that we are going to see is the data traffic monitoring, the anomaly detection, the real-time risk assessment models for incident management, the CM, the honeypot, and the DSS, although there will be some mentions of the other tools as well where they're fitting. Based on the overview of the timeline of the events, the detection tools we selected could have proven useful after the infection of the patient zero workstation and until the first servers had been compromised, as well as until the malicious payload has been detonated. For example, from the summary of the incident, the attacker continued to operate in the environment over an 8-week period until the detonation. The data traffic monitoring and the anomaly detection tools could have spotted the unexpected network activity produced by the attacker to the compromised machine, as well as from that machine towards the rest of the network. The decision support engine could potentially spot the relevant events, raise an alert, warn of potential escalation of the incident, and suggest damage minimization strategies. At the same time, the honeypot and intrusion detection tools could have detected port scans or unauthorized vulnerability scans and attempts to compromise HSE servers, issuing warnings that included specific details on the source of those activities. Another remark is that before the detonation of the Conti ransomware, there was a significant number of security-related events that could have triggered an immediate response if there was a centralized management structure for security and the appropriate tools to support it. For example, the Security Information and Event Management, the CM, could have acted as a central hub of those unauthorized events, emphasizing on their breadth and the sequence by which they were performed. The real-time cyber risk assessment tool in the DSS could help detect the potential as a major incident based on the vulnerabilities established by the attacker in the compromised systems and suggest preventative and mitigating actions. Diving a little bit deeper on some of the more relevant key findings of the report regarding detection and immediate response, we have identified the following potential contributions. On the lack of the centralized cybersecurity function for the organization, tools like the CM, the DSS, the blockchain-based registry, and the real-time cyber risk assessment tools are important for the centralized and coordinated actions required to detect and react on security events and incidents. On the overcomplexity of the HSC's systems, and until an asset registry has been fully established, several tools like the Vulnerability Assessment as a Service, the CM, the DSS, and the risk assessment tools can prioritize risk on automatically generated asset registries, even before an information security management system has been put into place. Additionally, on the observation that there was no security monitoring capacity, the Cyber Threats Taxonomy and Forensic Data Collection Engine, the VAS, the CM, the DSS, and the RCRA are exactly the types of tools that can assist, provided that the appropriate human and IT resources are in place to operate them. On the over-reliance on the antivirus tool, we need to observe that since the initial email went through spam filters and its local execution wasn't prevented neither by the antivirus tool or the execution prevention policies for Office files, tools like VAS, RCRA, DSS, data traffic monitoring, and anomaly detection tools could help detect the actions performed by the attacker and provide a multi-layered threat detection system. On the point that the attacker was active within the HSC networks, performing unstealthy actions, tools like the data traffic monitoring and anomaly detection, as well as the honeypot, can spot those activities and raise appropriate alarms. Lastly, on the point that the investigation was required to be performed by external to the HSC parties, tools like the Cyber Threat Taxonomy and Forensic Data Collection Engine, blockchain-based threats registry, and cybersecurity and knowledge base can be installed on premises, provided there are resources and personnel to operate them. At this point, we need to mention that a lot, if not almost all, of the recommendations made by PwC in its report relate to the organizational aspects of the preparedness, detection, and response. Although they appear to be technical in a few cases, they are more business decisions. These need systems in place, and systems need a management commitment. The ISO 27001 standard early on identifies the necessity to obtain a commitment by the leadership that appropriate resources will be secured to design and operate an information security management system. There are several standards, legislation, and support to set up these systems, but in the end, in order to ensure that they are functional, well supported, properly maintained, and effective, the top management needs to accept that A, there is a significant financial and human risk associated with security incidents, and B, the design and operation of information security management systems requires dedicated financial and human resources. What we need to keep in mind, though, is that cost of a major incident is a lot higher than the one to set up an ISMS. The SPHINX project provides several practical tools to assist in setting up security systems, speeding up the process, and significantly reducing the associated costs while increasing their effectiveness. In cybersecurity, the most important systems that need to be shielded are the ones comprised of people. This means that more important than the security enhancing IT tools that are being researched and developed and are presented in this event is the adoption by humans of security aware behaviors, processes, principles, and policies that put them into use. On behalf of the SPHINX project, I want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Christos. We'll now move on then to PANACEA, and if Sabina, you would like to take the floor.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Share the screen.
There you are.
Okay.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Perfectly.
Okay. My name is Sabina Magalini. I already presented at the beginning. I am an emergency surgeon for my day job, so I am less technical than the partners who have spoken before. We come to PANACEA last but not least of these three projects. What do I want to tell you about PANACEA? There are many things about the projects. We were centered from the beginning, when we wrote the project, on the people-centric nature of what we were trying to achieve. So we really focalized very much, not only on the technical part, but also on the people-centered part. This is just something I want to show you because sometimes telling stories is more effective than explaining the situation. This was what was broadcasted on the TG3, which is a national news during the pandemic. They showed the nurses, they showed that the passwords and the users' identification were exactly on the wall. So this is the way we worked in this period. And this is something just to explain what we are going through. This is how PANACEA actually managed to think about the situation. We designed 4 technical tools and 3 non-technical tools. By non-technical, I'm not saying humanistic, but anyway, that are relative to organization, to governance, and to nurses and doctors and administrative staff. Very briefly, I will just describe the 4 technical tools are: one, a dynamic risk assessment platform, which is a software that is based on a system done by our partners from Reza, which have a similar emulation environment for the assets that you are identifying, and they work for ENISA. So this system was already in place, and we put the hospital into that system. Practically, we did a risk assessment of the labs that is very specific, and this tool is already ready if someone wants to use it to verify if your lab or your big lab of your hospital is secure. Then we did software for information sharing. I'll talk about this later. Then we did a very nice solution for identification management, avoiding all these boring, terrible logs in and logs out of the computer with the identification. This is like a system like the one you have at the bank. It's a face identification of the operator, not with the workstation that is taking input from your medical devices. So you go near the workstation and it says, hello, good morning, it's you, it's not you. When you go away, you log out automatically. Then there's another tool that is to identify if the assets, the medical devices you are buying or you're putting into the hospital are according to the norms that are supposed to be there. This is very useful for hospitals when they're doing procurement of devices. And then we have the 3 non-technical tools, which are a nudging tool that I will explain later, videos for education for cybersecurity awareness, and a cybersecurity governance tool set, which is very useful for hospital management. Okay, where can you find all these tools? In their precise description and how they have also been applied to the HSE attack, which was a little bit the philosophy behind this workshop as well. We developed a white paper and it is on our website. So you can go there and you have the complete explanation, technical explanation of all the tools. So how did we map these tools to the HSE attack? You heard the previous partners. We concentrated more on the recovery one, the immediate recovery when you have a cyber attack. 5 of our tools are perfectly adequate to this situation. the first one, and what I was more important that we understood right away from when they described the cyber attack and when analyzing it, is that the slowing down of the public hospitals, practically you cannot get anything done. And so there was a wide redirection to structures, maybe smaller, maybe less cyber secure, that anyway could comply for what work was not done in the major hospitals. This requires an exchange, a big exchange of the documentation, because the first thing you do when a patient comes in is you give him a CT exam or some kind of radiological exams. The radiological instruments do not work if they're not logged in, especially the CTs and so. So when they did the outsourcing of these radiological exams, they had to take the results by motorcycle or by foot back to the main hospital. So there was an availability risk and also a confidentiality risk. And with our secure information sharing platform, which is something that is designed, it's very simple. It's like a Dropbox that, however, can be used, that you can put a lot of data on it, and it is GDPR compliant, but it can be used independently from the fact that you are from the hospital or from another structure. It's independent of the hospital systems, okay, the ICT systems. So it would have been easy to set up and to use it. It would have avoided them probably a lot of problems. Naturally, to have these systems used, you have to have them, you have to know how to use them, you have to have them in the hospital. Sometimes they should be available and known to all the people that work, the radiology team, the nursing team, etc. Then another tool that would have been very useful is the resilience governance tool. In this governance tools, we did a deep analysis of the social technical systems of the hospital, meaning how wards work, how orders are given inside the hospital management. And in this governance tool, we have identified the fact that sometimes when you want to have a management change or anyway you want to enforce something, you have to have someone at the level of personnel, like I don't know, a chief nurse in a ward or one doctor of a medical team that is more expert in the discipline that you need to enforce. Like, for example, the hypothesis of having these, what we call them, cybersecurity angels. This is a terminology that is sometimes used for this kind of profiles, but we call them the information security reference persons. If these had been there, I mean, if you had on the spot people that knew what was happening and what you had to do to recover, probably it would have been less work. And the third tool that is, I think, something that we addressed together with a psychologist from Northumbria University, Professor Lynn Coventry, which is an analysis on how to enforce good behaviors by the staff. We call it a nudging tool. And I will explain just 1 minute how it works. This nudging tool starts from engaging personnel, giving questions, asking questions to all the personnel in the hospital. You can divide them by categories: nurses, doctors, administrative, I don't know, whatever you want. And you analyze through 3 questionnaires, which are simple. We translated them into Italian, into Greek, so we used it in the 3 hospitals, which, by the way, are Ireland, Greece, in Crete, and in my hospital here in Rome. And the first questionnaire addresses the cybersecurity attitudes of your personnel. With this, you have a profile of what their attitude is. And naturally, the attitudes are different according if the people are just hired or they're old workers. And in this COVID times, we had so many new hiring in the hospital that it's really difficult to profile your personnel. Then the second question explores their use of technology. Practically, you are asking them questions. How many times do you use a USB? How many times are you accessing the patient information from outside the organization? And then a third questionnaire in which you ask them, how do you deem important and especially achievable the security behaviors that your hospital management enforces? Naturally, when you hire someone, you give them some duties and you tell them how the things have to be done like this and this, you give them online training, many other things. But what you have to understand is how much they deem that behavior performable. This is very important. And from this, we deduce the catalog of human vulnerabilities. When you analyze where your vulnerabilities are, then you can use the systems, because it's very difficult to enforce behaviors in a military way, you know, on hospital staff, especially on doctors, which do not comply with practically anything. And but you can use some nudges that can may be helpful for your purposes. These are just an example of some of the nudges we designed. These are little posters in Italian, in Greek, and in English that you put close to the workstations if you see that one of the risky behaviors is not logging out from your workstation, for example. These instead are an example of some video clips that we designed together with Arena Consulting, and they have training systems. One of the more modern ones is through these tiny video clips. They're 1-2 minutes, and they have been designed with showing all the risky behaviors and what are the possible consequences. Now, many modern hospitals have videos, you know, in the halls or in the waiting rooms, sometimes in the mess. And so these video clips can be run constantly, not all day, because naturally there's a lot of information there, but every once in a while, these can be run on these hospital structures. And people really look at them and they become aware of the situation. At least they know what they're talking about, what we're talking about. You can see them on the YouTube playlist. So how are we going to go from what is PANACEA going to do to render these things public and to be used? And from the 1st of March, PANACEA is going to be transformed into a cybersecurity advisory service. We designed this PHCAS, and I would be the contact person at the beginning. So what is this organization that we have decided to put up? The partners worked very well together. And so we decided to put up a collaboration mechanism to provide advisory services to hospital and healthcare organizations, relying a lot on what we would think are the trade secrets in a way we have, because we are hospital operators and we have based this very much on the actual reality of how people are behaving, with the analysis of the social-technical systems that we have done in depth. So we would do an in-depth assessment of the vulnerabilities and a risk management capacity building when we identify what the risks are, and also to suggest the different partners who would naturally maintain their IPR rights to say, yes, we can suggest this partner would work well in your hospital, and this duty is more for this other partner. So this is naturally a new way of bringing ahead, I think, a European project. I hope it works, or maybe that it will evolve into something more mature. But for the moment, it's for procurement and deployment of new medical devices. And if you want to set up smart working system. And also one of the great problems in hospital now is going to be the telemedicine services they are putting up. There are over 250 telemedicine platforms they're offering you to buy to do telemedicine. Some of these are secure, some are not. So these must be well identified before you put up the system. And also on cybersecurity investment decision making, which is very important. In our consortium, we had an insurance company, which we think gave it like a different perspective also in the government's tool, if you want to go look at it. Now, I talk about the partners at the end instead of at the beginning. And these are the partners of PANACEA. We had an insurance company, which is European, say Italy. We had research universities. We had 3 hospitals, as I told you. We have an SME from France, which is a very big SME, IDEA, which did the identity management. Then we had different systems to identify the operator to the machine, which was one of the things the calls were asking for. And we had also technological partners and universities, and also this psychology research, which I think was very, very useful. I thank you all, and I hope you go visit our website.
Thank you very much, Sabina. Always thought-provoking from a medical perspective, and it's really great to have someone like you coordinating a project like PANACEA, because you can really bring in the on the ground perspective. So thank you very much. We'll now turn our attention to and welcome to the floor the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, and it's Maria. Maria Papaphilippou, I apologize if I mispronounced your surname. You are the Cybersecurity Officer at ENISA, which is the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity. If you're not already aware of this agency, this is a really important opportunity to discover more. So thank you, Maria. You can start sharing your screen.
So, hello.
Yeah, hello, we can see you, we can hear you.
Yeah. Seeing my screen now.
Yep.
Thank you for the introduction, Stephanie. So, by way of introduction, my name is Maria Papaphilippou. I work at the Policy Development and Implementation Unit at ENISA. And I'm here to discuss ENISA's perspectives and latest activities with regards to healthcare cybersecurity. For those of you who are not familiar with ENISA, it is the EU Agency for Cybersecurity. ENISA's vision is to work towards a trusted and cybersecure Europe in cooperation with the wider community. And our mission is to achieve a high common level of cybersecurity across the Union. We try to achieve that by engaging in a number of activities. But first, I'd like to go through the regulatory framework related to healthcare briefly. The main regulatory instrument is the NIS Directive, the Network and Information Security Directive, which is the first EU law to introduce the baseline cybersecurity requirements and identify sectors of essential services relying on information and communication technologies. And of course, the health sector is in the scope of the NIS Directive and includes entities that could be identified as operators of essential services, such as hospitals, for example. The second draft of the NIS Directive, NIS 2, is expected to harmonize the implementation of these baseline cybersecurity measures and requirements based on lessons learned from the first version of the directive. The NIS Directive enables cooperation through the CSERTS network and the cooperation group. The cooperation group's work is organized in several work streams that address the NIS implementation issues. And one recently established work stream is work stream 12, which focuses on the health sector. Another key piece of the EU policy and regulatory framework is the MDR, the Medical Devices Regulation, which defines the safety, security, and IT security requirements. The MDR introduces novelties relating to cybersecurity, for example, that medical software could be considered as medical devices, that vulnerabilities need to be reported, and that the defined safety and security requirements also include IT security requirements. I don't think you need me to tell you that when it comes to health, we have seen a proliferation of incidents over the past few years. For example, the ransomware attack that severely affected the Irish health services. I will just provide some numbers here. It is estimated that one healthcare record costs around €200 versus €5 for a financial record, such as a credit card. Of course, you can cancel a credit card, but not the medical data. So ENISA has collected information from many sources relating to the threats affecting the health sector, and the 6 key observations are that there's a global increase in sophisticated, targeted, and coordinated ransomware attacks in healthcare organizations, which are unfortunately expected to remain highly active. The COVID-19 pandemic has created various opportunities for cybercriminals targeting sensitive health services. There's, of course, a global increase in remote working due to the pandemic that has forced swift adoption of technologies to support remote working, such as cloud services. And it seems that misconfigured cloud deployments were the leading cause of breaches, and it's estimated that such attacks are likely to become more impactful. Additionally, there has been a global rising trend in health sector related data breaches. For example, in 2018, healthcare data breaches were being reported at the rate of around 1 per day in the US, and in late 2020, that rate had doubled. Also, attacks against managed service providers are increasing. As we've seen in early July 2021, a major supply chain ransomware attack took place, Kaseya, which spread the infection into more than 1,000 businesses and affected 1 million computers, where the attackers requested 50 million for the decryption. And finally, we've seen that there's a shortage in cybersecurity skills in the health sector. I would say resources in general, which results in insufficient cyber threat and risk management. But I would go into specific data with regards to threats affecting the health sector. As per ENISA's threat landscape, healthcare threat actors relate mainly to data breaches, ransomware, and malware. And as per ENISA's Cybersecurity Incident Reporting and Analysis System, CIRAS, the healthcare-related incidents that were reported up to the end of October 2021 related mainly to system failures, human errors, malicious actions, and natural phenomena. And I just want to point out that natural phenomena in this case is the pandemic. So from ENISA's side, we have been working in the health sector for a number of years. In addition to support the implementation of the ENISA directive, we have published a number of reports. For example, the cybersecurity and resilience for smart hospitals, which includes key recommendations for enhancing information security in smart hospitals. The second is the procurement guidelines for cybersecurity in hospitals, where it offers cybersecurity guidelines for hospitals when procuring services, products, and infrastructure. And finally, the cloud security for healthcare services, which provides cloud security practices for the healthcare sector, including data protection. All these reports are available on ENISA's website. And with regards to the procurement guidelines mentioned earlier, we have also created a tool which is available on ENISA's website as well, in order to support health operators to make use of these guidelines. And the short version of the procurement guidelines has been translated in all European languages. So during the pandemic, we have also redirected efforts to support healthcare providers by providing recommendations for the cybersecurity guidelines relating to COVID-19 tracing apps. We have been issuing situational reports on a weekly basis, and We facilitated the establishment of the Healthcare Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the Health ISAC. Also, in order to bring the healthcare community together, we organized the annual e-health security conference, which was held virtually in 2020. Last year, we decided to skip it, and it's planned for the third quarter of 2022, but depending on the evolution of the pandemic. Finally, another important initiative is the Pan-European Cyber Crisis Exercise, the Cyber Europe, which is organized by ENISA. The exercise takes place every 2 years over the course of 2 days and focuses on one sector each time. It includes a series of simulated cybersecurity incidents that escalate to an EU-level crisis and facilitates testing for a wide range of possible incidents that is open, and it's therefore open for all stakeholders. Sorry. It was also cancelled in 2020 and 2021 due to the pandemic, and it's scheduled for this summer 2022. You can contact your national competent authority in order to participate, since this year it will be focused on the health sector. And now to sum up, we know that cybersecurity is an important pillar of the EU policy making, and ENISA's key tasks are to identify and share good practices and guidelines relating to policy development and implementation. Unfortunately, cyber attacks increasingly target and impact critical infrastructure, including the health sector. It is estimated that the sector will continue to be heavily targeted, and especially by ransomware groups. It's also evident that during the next decade, cybersecurity risks will become harder to assess and interpret due to the growing complexity of the threat landscape and the expansion of the attack surface. According to input from member states, the main challenges in cyber threat management seem to be the complexity of the technology environment, the low cybersecurity maturity level of the sector, the inadequate cybersecurity resources, and legacy systems that lacked patches, updates, and outdated medical equipment in several cases. So this shortage in skills and resources results in insufficient cyber threat and risk management. And finally, I would urge you to consider participating in the Cyber Europe exercise and the eHealth conference. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria. That was really insightful. And yeah, I would also invite anyone in the audience to take a look at your website. There are lots of resources, some of which you highlighted in your presentation. So thank you very much. I'd like to invite all of the panelists back and to share their screen so that we can now move on to the interactive panel discussion. So Reza, Maria, Peter, Christos, CUREX, Sabina, and Christos SPHINX, along with Pasquale as well. If we can all take the floor, we'll now start the interactive discussion, and my colleague Christina will share the slide with the panel questions on them. So thank you, Christina.
Yes, I'm
yes, lovely. Thank
sharing
you.
the screen. Just can you see it? No,
not yet.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, now we can see it, Christina. Thank you. So we've heard about lots of different and very complex and diverse facets that all come together in the cybersecurity landscape, as particularly in healthcare. And as Maria's just been saying, it's a particularly complex landscape with legacy systems and a lot of unpreparedness. We've known that this has been a vulnerable sector for quite a number of years. So I'd like to pass the floor first, or open the floor first to you, Maria, because we've got a lot of, this really insightful presentation from the health service executive, and they've been very transparent in sharing this information with not just with us today, but in through other channels. And so in your view, and as a cybersecurity expert at ENISA, what can we now learn from this attack in practical terms? This question is for you, Maria.
Could you please repeat the last part?
Yeah. So yeah, what can we learn in practical terms from the attack on the health service executive?
Yes, as I've mentioned several times today, there seems to be a shortage in resources and skills, and that showed in several attacks. Oftentimes, hospitals and clinics do not have designated CISOs and IT staff, if any IT staff. They have to deal with cybersecurity issues or incidents. Fortunately, NIS2 introduces clauses to incentivize investments and awareness, which was my second point. I believe we need to invest in awareness. For example, it mandates board-level accountability for non-compliance with cyber risk management measures, which is important. So yeah, we could start by identifying threats and risks affecting critical assets and services.
Yeah, in fact, I think also, yeah, the next question related to this is to Peter and Helen. So if you could reverse and rewind, I know you gave us a really comprehensive overview of the attack and the many challenges that you faced afterwards, you know, and ultimately this is a matter of protecting patients and ensuring their safety. But if you could reverse and rewind, what would you have done differently? And the floor is open to both yourself, Peter, and Helen.
So I don't know, Peter, do you want me to go or?
Yes, please. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
I wouldn't have joined the HSE and I would have had a lovely summer holiday. But, that's my first thing. No, I suppose the reality of it is you know, if I look at all the presentations the guys have given us, you know, it's all of the above, and that's the difficulty with it. It is a tsunami of things you should do to address cybersecurity in your organization. And if you take Sabina, you know, in the medical world, we're a lot more secure in the HSE. We actually put the passwords and usernames underneath the keyboard. So we've advanced in terms of our cybersecurity on the ground. So this is the sort of thing you're dealing with. So we would have, following the attack, completely changed every password, moved the ante up on all our service accounts to, you know, the highest level of kind of password complexity. And that sort of thing helps. So there's lots of hardening stuff that we did, that we had started. So what happens in the HSE in any case is, you know, you go out to make changes that are IT type. They would see them as pure IT type changes, like password hardening, MFA, you know, all sorts of application hardening, which now causes problems. And as Sabina rightly pointed out, the consultant doesn't want to know. The consultant doesn't want to use a HSE phone, which is managed and governed and has all the GDPR stuff applied to it. They want to use their own phone. So you have all this sorts of complexities. And I suppose if I had my time now, I wouldn't take it. You know, now I'm standing in front of them going, you know, there's how we do it. You either use that or you know, you go home, because you have to be stronger. I would have broken a lot more eggs. So I would have gone through and I would have, you know, tried to do it in a more manageable way and maybe given people time and kind of move the dial, you know, whereas I suppose the benefit of cyber was because everything was broken. It was only brought back in you know, we only brought it back secure as much as possible. We still hit a lot of legacy, and legacy is massive in our organization. You hit a legacy application that, for example, controls a piece of medical device that costs the organization 3 or 4 million. They're not that bothered about the Windows 2006 server, because you might be able to change that, but hey, you need another 10 million to buy the next new device. So this is the sort of complexities that are on the ground. So, you know, I think we need to start, number one, going forward, you know, ensuring the kind of standards that you don't get over into production without those kind of standards, and then address as much of the legacy as quickly as possible and to turn the dial on it. So I suppose in terms of that, and I think the organizational change, again, you know, like all organizations, you know, we knew we needed a chief information security officer, the role, but the problem, I suppose, was to actually get to that position where you actually had it. And then in the interim, you had, I suppose, people doing the job, and it was, I wouldn't say it was a sideline, but it wasn't their main focus, and it was in the technology team. So I worked in banks, and I was on the technology team going, well, I want to go into production, and I had the CISO looking me in the eye going, you're not going. And now I was the two people, I was talking to myself. So I was obviously coming to massive agreement. So I suppose the reality of it is you need that focus where somebody is obsessed with security to such a level that they they would stop anything, and they would have the power to stop something going into production. If you don't have that, then the reality of it is the rot will continue. And then, so from our perspective, I suppose the two things I would have broke more eggs. I would have, you know, pushed the thing on it and caused maybe a lot of pain in the organization. I wouldn't have got any credence for it because they wouldn't have realized what I had stopped, if you know what I mean. So it's a difficult position, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your metaphors, by the way. And one of the pleasures of my childhood is this thing that we always used to say: no one tells a story quite like an English woman. Or we used to say man, but in your case, we definitely need to get a bit of gender balance. Thank you so much. So Peter,
sorry, I have to step in there. I am Irish.
Yes, I know. No, I always say no one tells a story quite like an Englishman we used to say, but in your case, no one tells a story quite like an English woman.
I would get shot if I didn't stick up for my nationality.
No, I'm British, but I grew up with a lot of Irish people, so yes, it's a happy childhood memory. Even in this, you know, in many other circumstances. But yes, Peter, anything to add?
I'd have believed my own warnings, I think. We have a all hazards approach to responding to crisis. And we were ready for floods and earthquakes and pandemic and all sorts of things. And we paid lip service to planning and preparing for a cyber incident. We have it listed as the things we should deal with, but we didn't exercise for it. So I would have exercised for it, and we would have had proper exercises, and we would have driven it home. And perhaps in the simulation, training and simulation, that's what we should have done, and that's what we need to do now. Because otherwise, you know, we have even now we're getting a little bit of same old back from people on the cyber attack is over, it's finished, it was an IT problem, not my problem. So we still have to keep hammering home that one.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, in fact, that's interesting in the view of the focus also on cyber ranges and rehearsing your attacks. Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Thank you, Peter. So we'll now move on to the next question, and this one is first. We'll start with Sabina. How do we ensure cybersecurity no longer remains just a problem for IT?
Well, I would leverage on what was our experience during the PANACEA project. We analyzed, as I told you, the socio-technical system. So what kind of personnel we're dealing with, what are their relationship with the hospital management? Because in Italy, there was a big factor of labor unions, which has governed, let's say, the relationship between the operators and the person that is giving them work for a long time. Now this has gone down a little bit. I mean, personnel does not rely on labor unions to say, I want to do this, I want to do that. Their relationship with the management of the system, of the hospital, is more direct. So what I would start from doing questionnaires. I would give them those famous questionnaires and understand how they see the situation and what they are doing precisely. Because independently from the results you get, the simple fact of asking them is a way of raising awareness. Now, if you look at the young people, everything is in engagement. Now the Facebook, the Twitter has to engage you. It means that you have to give an answer. So I would suggest this tool of the questionnaires to start from, as an awareness raising and as a good system then to put up a nudging methodology if necessary.
Indeed, yes, there's still a big, an enormous amount of effort still needed to raise this awareness and educate people. And yeah, I agree. Christos, the CUREX, Christos, your view on this question?
Yes. Well, I think that cybersecurity is not a problem of only of the ICT. If you analyze an attack, you will see that the most critical chain or the weakness chain is the person, is the user or the patient, whatever the user means. So although we can have the best security solution, the best machines, everything automated, we can put robots, I would say, to protect every bit. If you have a person that is vulnerable or in phishing, in social engineering, or by pressing a button that it's dangerous, then we will have, let's say, the risky effects, what we have seen. And I think what we will see in the future, regardless of the measure that we're going to take. My approach is that we need to develop certain procedures for everything, for how to deal with an email, what to do if we receive a suspicious email, what to do before reading this, or if we do this, if we do the risky action, the fault. I am a professor in cybersecurity, and I have done mistakes in cybersecurity. I have clicked on an email. This is for sure. It will happen. What I would like to share, I've said a lot of times, we have done a penetration testing for a company that is a security-related company, and all of them, they were aware that next Monday they will have a penetration testing, and half of them. I was aware also, and when my colleagues create some scenarios, I was infected as well. I knew, because during the weekend they try to cheat internally the team. So it's not a matter if, it's when this will happen. So what is necessary? To know what to do. Even when you press something to unplug the cable, this is a hard measure, but this is a measure. If you do something, just unplug the cable. This is something. So sorry for being so practical, but I think this is a solution. So we need procedures, what to do before, during, and after. Because I see Helen and Peter, you experienced a lot of problems after or during the attack and after the attack, how to recover. This is very, it's a complex problem. It's a huge problem.
No, in fact, indeed, it's not when, it's not if, it's when. And, we saw at the beginning of the pandemic how, a lot of phishing attacks were increasing and so on and so forth.
Stephanie, yes.
And a lot of people,
a next step, together with the security solution, together with the ICT guys, the security guys that are going to develop the best machines and the best tool, we have to train the personnel. So we have to, we're going to have planned procedures, but then we have to teach them properly, not only by PowerPoints, but to teach them, to train them on the field with real scenarios and redo it again and again and again, in order to have, let's say, the highest percentage of awareness, and to be sure that they have all the skills that are required. It's like driving on the road. You have to educate at least 80% or 90% of the persons that they are driving to drive safely and well, in order not to have accidents.
Yeah, and pay special attention to those vulnerable road users as well. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll now pass the floor then to Christos, SPHINX coordinator, for your view on this.
Well, the practicality of the issue does indeed stem from managing people and working with processes, procedures, putting up policies and all that. It's a centralized view of the issue that needs to be taken into account in order to actually build systems like that. It's small fixes here and there are never the proper way to deal with security. It's building a network and an organizational structure that does the work for it. So that organizational structure needs to have resources for it. It needs to have personnel. It needs to have specific responsibilities. It has to take into account every aspect of cybersecurity, whatever it is, because we are talking about cyber attacks currently, and we heard from ENISA earlier from Maria that the bulk of the problems are issues that have to do with faulty equipment, which means that we know about them not because of the existence of such events, because they are known and will happen. We know them because not enough preventive actions were taken in order to alleviate any kind of impact they would have afterwards. If you had backups when a hard disk broke down, or if you had spare hard disk in a RAID configuration, and you didn't have to order them and wait for 6 months to get them, then you would solve them. In order to have those controls in place, you need to have a system in place. And for a system to be in place, you have to have a coherent way to describe the entirety of what information security is, which means organizational structure, resources, people, money. It costs.
Okay, thought-provoking, thank you. So on to our next question. Oh, so Maria, I don't know if you want to add anything here.
No, it was very well said. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I think we've got some very nice perspectives from all three coordinators. So now moving on to the next question. This sort of relates to what we've already been saying, but the question is, and I'll say this slowly because it's a long question, how do we bridge the gap between outsourced cyber security with the people working on the ground in healthcare organizations, both in terms of preparation and in response? Would you like me to repeat it, or no? The questions, this one is for the panelists Sabina and Christos, CUREX.
Well, I would say call the PHCAS, since we've studied 3 years on how to apply systems to hospitals. But naturally, the problem is there because the official firms that are doing the software and the hardware, they're much more experienced, obviously, than the researchers. All these all these tools we have presented are not at a TRL over 6 or 7, maybe someone is 8 or 9, but the fact is that these firms or agencies should be opened to research, because even the solutions they are offering the hospitals, sometimes they seem hardcore. This is really a sturdy mechanism. It's not so, because if you do not adapt it to the reality that then you're working with, it's very difficult, because you can we bought here the most expensive electronic health record systems, we have a lot of cybersecurity assets in our hospital, but anyway, there's always a way around it, because as you say, there's people working there. So in a way, I would say for the commercial firms that are asking, to work in hospitals and offering now, because now there's a big offer and there's also a big need. Hospitals are in the position that they're going to buy these things because they're scared, because there will be norms that will say that you will have to spend some part of your budget for this or that. But this has to be applied to a different kind of structure, a very particular type of critical infrastructure. And this has to be taken into consideration.
Thank you, Sabina. Christos?
Yes, I will agree with Sabina, and I will use an example. For example, we have solutions that for banks and the financial sector, the banks are more mature in cybersecurity than the hospitals. And the reason is that more than 10 years ago, we had a big event, a big cyber incidents in the financial sector. It was actually the first sector that was hit by hackers, crackers, all that stuff. But if we take this solution, even with some sort of modification, I don't think that this can be applied to the health sector, because the ecosystem hospital is completely different from the bank. For example, for the bank, it is necessary to have strict procedures because we keep money, you keep money, you save money, and you have certain procedures to deal with customers, with everything. In a hospital, and you have to deal with the lives of the patients, and your first priority is to save their life. So you should have a different culture. You have to educate, or you have users that will have different perspective, and they will not accept a solution in a way for a bank, in a way that a personnel that work for a bank will do it. So from my point of view, it is necessary to have a different approach. Okay, the high level, the technology at the high level might be the same, vulnerability, analytics, artificial intelligence, firewalls, VPN, yes. But the way that we are going to adapt it and adopt it and apply this, it will be completely different in order to have the results that are required. So it's a new field with different characteristics and a completely different environment. So you have to start from the beginning in order to do this in a correct way. Otherwise, we are going to apply some solution that the result will be, the effectiveness will be something like 50%, which is not actually nothing. We have to reach a very high score.
They have to look at research, what is going on now.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to do research, because it's constantly evolving.
And I would like to share with you my experience. Before this project, I didn't have experience with the health sector. Yes, I had experience with the cybersecurity. I've been working in cybersecurity for the last 21 years. And I have to rethink in another way. I have to reconsider many things that I consider them for facts, it's for sure. But in the health sector, you have to rethink about all these facts, because it's a completely different way. I have to speak with Sabina. She's a perfect doctor, but we have somehow to communicate, and sometimes it's hard, but we have to analyze it a lot, every problem, every aspect, in order to find a common ground.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to our next question now, and this one is for SPHINX, Christos, and Reza. So how do we move from a better understanding of cyber risks in healthcare to implementing and budgeting in this implementation? So Reza, if you'd like to go first. So yes, moving sure. From okay, floor is yours.
Thanks for the question. So we just heard about the challenges in the health sector, and implementation would need, I would say, a collective endeavor at different levels. I can think of the EU level, of course, but there are national level, member states, there are organizational levels. We can think of even individual efforts like what we are witnessing here within this webinar, people that have engaged their efforts without counting in addressing sophisticated issues in actually a pandemic setup, which is extraordinary. So I can see at the European level, there are a lot of funding opportunities for implementation. We can, for example, think of the Recovery and Resilience Fund that would apply to critical infrastructure, securing such kind of foundational layers. There are a number of research, innovation, deployment funds, as I mentioned, including digital skill building and training that would apply also to the developing training tool sets and guidelines and material for the health sector. I can think of a significant number of reusable common public resources. We have typically the expertise within ENISA. We have the coordination group within the NIST directive, where we have this work stream on health, which is now active since a couple of years. We have the Health ISAC, which is also supported by the Commission for information sharing and analysis across the health sector operators of essential services, where we have a number of organizations related to these projects that are involved as well. Yeah, then we have the European Cybersecurity Competence Center. We have the network of national coordination centers. So there are a number of resources that any implementation plan at a national level or organizational level could try to seize and to use and reuse for specific implementation plans. Then, of course, there would need involvement from the management, having a strategic plan for cybersecurity in specific organizations in line with national and European regulations. Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's a huge challenge, but there is no way. It has to be addressed. So yeah, let's leverage the opportunities that are there, including the output from these projects. Actually, I would invite interested parties to look at the websites of these three projects. There are a number of public resources that might actually astonish even you in terms of depth and quality of tackling these sophisticated challenges, and at the same time making them available as public resources through different channels, including their websites and also publications. Yeah, so I hope this would address your question.
Yeah, I think as well, yeah, we definitely need to invite, the healthcare sector to take a look at what we do have in Europe already, irrespective of their maturity levels, because there could be something there, like we've seen this afternoon, that can resolve or help resolve specific challenges. But obviously, as we've also pointed out, we need to always look at a big picture. So thank you to all our panelists. I would like to invite...
There's still my reply on this one, because Reza did point out the top level, the policy level part of it. And I would like to also address a little bit Martin's question regarding security gaps that may emerge due to the use of too many tools and solutions. So trying to address the question of the cost. How do you move to a cost structure for that? How do you cost cybersecurity, and how you don't fall into those security gaps? The foundation rule of how to set up information security within an organization is that it needs to be treated as a project. This is different to treating cybersecurity as a function of an organization, because the project involves the creation of an information security management system, and only then this system will be operated by the organization as one of its functions. So as with all projects, you start with a feasibility study. There you define the scope of the system. PwC mentions it in its report as boundaries of the system, the departments, the buildings, the organizational units. Then you define tasks, schedule, milestones, deliverables. Estimating a cost after that works in the same way as it works with any other project. It can use any cost estimation model any organization is currently using. But if you choose to outsource it, you need to make sure that you have people and resources internally that will be actively involved. This replies to the question of by Martin in the fact that if you have a system where you are monitoring a set amount of controls, and there are certain features that mitigate risk per control or per asset, then what you basically do is have a checklist, a plan to measure and remeasure the risk and the effectiveness of the actions you've taken. This is the whole meaning of having a system which has a feedback loop by which it is being checked. So if you outsource it, you need to have internal people working with it in the project of setting up your security system. These will be the people that afterwards will be called upon to operate the system or train others to do it. So one key element to keep in mind when planning this project to set up a cybersecurity or an information security system is that you need to set up an end goal. So after the system has been put into place and adequate resources have been secured for its operation and continuous improvement, it is validated. The best kind of validation is the one that is performed by independent external auditors. Once for the end of the project, so when you have the system complete, and then at regular intervals when the system is being operated. In other words, the end goal should be to obtain, in my view, certification of that system. So recognized international standards make the requirements and the path for how to do that easy to navigate. So to return to the initial question, costing something that has boundaries, has concrete goals and a clear plan is more or less standard practice for any organization or business.
Yeah, and I think one of the messages that's emerged this afternoon is this definitely isn't just do it once and then forget about it. But yeah, that's very important points. And thank you for answering Martin's question, and thank you, Martin, for the question. So I'd like to kind of close now with a call to action from each of our panelists. We'll go in our alphabetical order. So we'll come back to you then, Christos. What would be your call to action?
Well, I will echo a couple of remarks I made throughout the events and a few things that I heard that are of consequence, in my view, at least a little bit more critically now than they were a few years back. Information security is not just cybersecurity. It's not only about malicious actors. Although usually such events do have greater consequences. So apart from IT infrastructure and software, information security is as much about being protected against random events, taking care of physical security, and most of all, it's about setting up policies and processes that are applied and maintained by human beings. Software tools we are presenting here are there to make people's work more manageable and efficient. They cannot make people obsolete, even if that was what we wanted to do. Last point I want to make is about making commitments. Properly setting up and operating an information security management system for an organization is for the top management to make the decision to commit and regularly budget resources and reviews of that system. I cannot stress enough how important that is to cybersecurity and information security in general. It's foremost a matter of leadership, of people, and then of information technology and the digital domain. Our tools come after the point where leadership has made that commitment to information security.
Thank you very much. We're going to have to rush a little bit now. Christos from CUREX.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with what the other Christos has mentioned, and I would like to add that cybersecurity is more complex, or information security is more complex issue that we currently have in mind, because it has to do with technology, it has to do with mistakes, faults, and it has to do also with people, with their personality, their emotion, how they feel, and everything. So we have to consider it from different aspects. And as I said, we have to go together. Technology, we need advanced tools like the ones that we have developed, and more tools and more experience and more knowledge to share among us. Another important issue is that I would like to mention is that the top management, or some or many people that are involved in the chain of managing organization, including health organization, they do not believe on cybersecurity protection because it's difficult to perceive, it's difficult to see. When you buy something, you can see it. Okay, this is, for example, a new surgery tool. You can see it, you operate people, so you see the results. Cybersecurity, you cannot see. It's something that it's a concept. And when you see the results, it's too late. Then you have the target, and you have lost data, everything. So it will be nice to find ways to persuade everybody that although they cannot see cybersecurity, it's mandatory to have cybersecurity protection, because this has impact not only on our personal and sensitive data, but also in our lives.
May I ask you then, please, to give us a short sort of statement. Helen and Peter, what would be yours? Call to action.
From my point of view, short statement.
Yeah.
Not if, cyber attack is not if, but when.
Yeah. Okay. Helen, do you want to add your own there?
Yeah, I suppose my view is cybersecurity is a continuous improvement cycle, but don't let a big program stop you doing tactical recommendations and stopping any rot in your organization. So stop the rot in terms of bringing in insecure applications while you launch this big program of work. So don't lose the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Maria has had to leave, but she's left us with this thought. So her takeaway would be to note that with the ongoing pandemic, healthcare stakeholders may have bigger fish to fry, which is an interesting one. I'd like to pass the floor now to Reza and then to Sabina to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yes, very quickly, I think I would say this webinar achieved its objective by showing very clearly how EU-funded research can be used effectively to provide opportunities to boost cyber resilience in the health sector. And I hope that this will not be the end of this journey. I will be looking forward to seeing more. I would invite you to keep up the good work, to keep your cooperation, to join forces, to disseminate your research results, and yeah, hopefully to see your tool sets deployed at a larger scale at the European level soon. Thanks for the invitation and good luck for the last phases of your project.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this cooperation, collaboration has been an excellent experience for everyone. Sabina, your call to action?
Well, I would say from my side, listen to your personnel, look at the people you're working with, try to understand what they're doing. But if I would have to conclude this webinar, it has been such a nice thing to speak about each other's projects, because this has given me a lot of new ideas and insights, because I think the reduplications of some things, sometimes it's useful also because resilient systems are the ones that are redundant in a way. So it's not useless that we do 2 or 3 times the same thing in different ways. I mean, that is, I would say it's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you very much. May I ask the people in the audience, I know a lot of you have had to leave earlier, but we've just got a quick poll, and there's a little bit of a trickery in this, but could we ask you to now go back to that question that we asked during the registration? How would you rank the following critical cybersecurity factors? And if we may ask you to select your top 2, we know that there are many, this is all multifaceted, and as Helen's pointed out, it's a continuous improvement cycle. I'm just going to let you go for a little bit longer, and then we'll stop it. Okay, I think we've got the highest we can get. I'm going to end the poll, and I do apologize. We've been a little bit naughty here because we're not going to reveal the results just now. We'll reveal them in a follow-up message to you all so that we can link you also to the presentations and the recording. So thank you very much to our panelists and especially to our audience. You know, you've really given us a lot of insights even before this webinar started. The road is a long one, we know, but I think the journey of just these 3 projects, along with, you know, and it's been, you know, really insightful. And from the beginning, we knew that having the HSC and ICM on board would be a valuable contribution to cybersecurity and healthcare, and they've definitely proven their worth. So thank you to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Razavi from DG Connect, and to Maria from ENISA for all of your insights, and we'll be following up soon. I'd just like to end with a special thank you, not only to all of the participants, panelists, and colleagues behind the scene. My name is Stephanie Park from Trust IT. I'm joined today by Cristina Mancarella and Rita Giuffrida, but we'd also like to thank cyberwatching.eu as a support action that's been following us for a long time across the over the past few years, giving us lots of resources and opportunities to cluster. So thank you also to Cyberwatching. So with that, I will end. I don't know, Sabina, if you or Pasquale wanted to say a final goodbye. Well, it's not a final goodbye, it's a goodbye for today.
Pasquale, you go on the final goodbye.
Yes, yeah. I was going to claim that I'd never even spoken to this man, but of course I know him very, very well indeed. So thank you, Pasquale, also for your, you know, involvement in the project. The floor is yours, Pasquale, for a quick thank you and goodbye.
Yes, no, I'm very, very happy for what has happened today. And I think that we got a very high number of participants coming from many different constituencies and stakeholders.
Absolutely.
And what has, just to conclude from a more, let's say, bit technical point of view, I think that the key word that has come out is that, again, also cybersecurity needs a holistic approach. Yeah. And this is what is true. So we have always to remember this. So said that, I think that our 3 projects have set up really a good wealth of expertise, good wealth of solutions, I think that we deserve that what we have found has some application in reality. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Pasquale. So thanks again to everyone, and thank you also to Elena Veroni, who's also part of the CUREX project, for her also involvement in the organisation. Again, so thanks everyone. Bear in mind the lessons learned today, and we'll be following up with a summary of the main takeaways. So thank you very much, participants. We hope that you take this messages home to your constituency, and we can hopefully really turn the research and innovation investments into a real solutions for healthcare. Thank you.
Sorry, just one last thing. I want to really thank Helen and Peter for having so kind to be transparent and to share the knowledge that they got. Thank you very much.
For telling it so well as well, so compellingly. So thank you again. Thanks everyone. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks very much, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.